You try with a federation, the whole thing end in confusion. Curriculum and then character, but somehow a spelling disaster. Mr. West Indian politician, I mean you went to a big institution, and how come you can't unite 7 million? When a West Indian unity, I know it's very easy. If you only rap to your people and tell them like me, them is one race from the same place.
Yes, and a very special good morning, Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the world. I'm Marlon Hopkins, and as always, welcome to the morning edition. It's Tuesday, October 28th, 2025, and thank you very much for joining us this morning. And of course, we are thinking about our brothers and sisters in Jamaica. Of course, Hurricane Melissa is heading to Jamaica, and of course, over the past few days, we have been focusing on the preparations as the Jamaicans prepare for this hurricane, this very powerful hurricane that is about to hit. All right, so as I said, even overnight and into this morning, we have been looking to our international partners to provide an update for you. So I understand that we do have that at this time. Let's take in this report.
Even with obviously the doors closed and everything, it's just very intense at the moment.
And just talk to us about exactly where you are at the moment.
So I'm currently staying in a hotel in Negril. So since yesterday, we've been on lockdown. So we've been having to stay in our room. And food packages are arriving when possible and when safe to do so. But yeah, so I've been staying in the hotel room, and we have to stay here until at least Wednesday.
We're talking to you, obviously, from the UK and covering this on British TV. What's the coverage on Jamaican television and in the press and the media on WhatsApp, etc., where you are?
So it's been made very clear to us out here and to the locals that there hasn't ever been a hurricane like the strength of this one to hit the island. So although the locals have been very reassuring and the workers at the hotel, there is a real sense of nerves from them as well as to, how much damage this may actually cause. But I mean, I haven't actually got access to TV at the moment. There is no signal here. But I'm just hoping that when everything does come back and when the sun does shine, the island isn't completely devastated.
And just
all right. Thank you very much for that update there. And soon as information or more information comes to hand, we will try to share that with you this morning. The BBC is reporting that 3 dead in Jamaica as strongest storm of the year, Hurricane Melissa, approaches the island. So a lot of preparations taking place as it relates to Hurricane Melissa. All right, so let's return to home and look at some of the issues that are facing us in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, we are joined on set this morning by opposition leader Pennelopa Beckles. Ms. Beckles, thank you very much for coming this morning. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we have been focusing on our brothers and sisters in Jamaica. I'm sure that you would want to express your regards to them this morning.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I recall being at the UN when there was Hurricane Irma. And at that time, there was the thought that that was probably one of the worst hurricanes ever to hit the region. As a matter of fact, when you have a Category 5 hurricane, you tell yourself, well, that's it. And they indicated that, that was even worse than a 5. So here we have Melissa. Remember, of course, our students that are still there. Some were able to come home, but for the people of Jamaica, I can well imagine, the kind of fear, because you look at the consequences, how you can lose your GDP in a day. Climate change has been a big issue for us. Yeah. Last year we were quite fortunate, but on behalf of the opposition, I extend, of course, prayers and we, we want to just continue to pray and remember students, Jamaica, and of course the surrounding islands, because you never know what can happen with a hurricane. You never know the direction. Things have all changed.
Yeah, and you speak about those students. It's 268 Trinidadians that are studying at the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies in Jamaica. Of course, there was some controversy over the weekend as it relates to the government's attempts to get the students out of Jamaica. Some students have been highly critical as to the efforts that this administration would have taken. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, my main concern is that, I mean, you listen to the minister, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, who spoke about sending an email, and the fact that the majority of students are still there. I mean, we understand the importance of always having some sort of evacuation plan, because it's not the first time something like that has happened. And we have looked at how other countries have dealt with it. As a matter of fact, the majority of other countries have ensured that their citizens have have returned home. I looked at St. Kitts as an example. I mean, they congratulated Inter-Caribbean because the students went from Turks and Caicos. So I believe that the government could have done better, and we really understand that it's not the best situation for our students to be in. The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs made reference to a reduced cost, and I mean, you understand that. I mean, I've been a student, you have been a student, you're away from home. This is something that you just simply didn't cater for, whether
Students
it's your
don't have
parents,
money.
you don't have money. And even if you do, we know that everything goes into chaos. So I mean, a reduced airfare, I mean that's really surprising, because during the finance debate, I mean, they talked about a 9 million increase in overseas travel in the office of the Prime Minister. So in a case like that, I mean, why would you even contemplate saying that you're offering a reduced fare to a student more than anything? Because that is something I believe that should be revenue foregone. That is something that the government should never think about, to bring home our students, that they should have to pay.
Is that the way past PNM administrations would have dealt with situations such as these?
I mean, yes, you send a charter. You normally send a charter. I mean, it's not the first time something like that has happened, and I'm sure it won't be the last. So I'm calling on the government that the students that have paid, I mean, they should be given a rebate. Of course, we hope it's not going to be like the property tax, where, you know, you promise, one says rebate, one says, you know, that's not clear. But I'm calling on them to look again at that policy as it relates to students paying, and for those who have paid. I mean, I think that is the kind of decision that I think all Trinidadians and Tobagonians will support the government for, which is to have the students return home and not to have to pay that fare.
Yeah. Madam Opposition Leader, let's deal with some other issues now. Of course, this is the top story on the front page of the Daily Express this morning. Let me just tell you what it says. Delcy moves immediately to suspend all agreements with TNT. And of course, they're speaking about the Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez. Kamala, I won't be blackmailed by Venezuela. The picture also shows, I don't know if you can see it there, but it's a caricature of the Prime Minister, and the caption says, Kamala caricature. A Venezuelan protester displays a placard with a caricature of Prime Minister Kamala Bissau during a rally yesterday in Tucupita, Venezuela, to reject the statements of the TNT Prime Minister and the government's permission for the U.S. to dock a military vessel, the USS Gravely, in Port of Spain. Just to tell you that there is an update on this story. So it was reported yesterday that the Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, had suggested to the government of Venezuela that these contracts, these current arrangements between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela be suspended. Well, I'm seeing now, and it is reported by the Express today, that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has agreed to the suspension of all of these gas agreements between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. And the projects, according to the Express, that are going to be affected, Laura and Manatee, Kokuna, Mannequin, and Dragon. So that's the latest in connection with these rising tensions between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. Your response?
Well, I mean, I'm not really surprised. I mean, The concern, of course, is what are the consequences for Trinidad and Tobago. We know that in terms of oil and gas, that is still our greatest revenue generator, contribution to our GDP. And this is a situation, if you recall, I think it was last month that the Honorable Prime Minister went to the United States and returned and was celebrating, the deal as it relates to the Dragon. Let's go back a couple of years ago when the Honorable Prime Minister said the Dragon is dead. We also heard them indicate, both the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy, that they were actually going to Venezuela to negotiate. And now you have a situation where the President and the Minister of Energy is saying, that's it, we have cancelled all agreements. I am calling on the Honorable Prime Minister to address the nation as it relates to this matter. The main reason being, we are not really clear what is the position. It is okay for the Prime Minister to say that we don't need the gas from Venezuela, and we know that is absolutely false. The government is saying that you have other options. You have Guyana, you have Suriname. You would recall some time ago when the Honorable Prime Minister made reference to the fact that they can go to Guyana for oil and also Grenada. The President of Guyana made it very clear that there was no oil available for Trinidad and Tobago. This is all about a zone of peace. This is all about relationships. The CARICOM made it very clear that the best approach is conflict resolution. We understand the consequences to Trinidad and Tobago and the entire region if a war breaks out. As the opposition, we are very clear in our mind. We do not support human trafficking. We do not support narco-trafficking. We do not support drug smuggling. But at the same time, Trinidad and Tobago has always been a signatory to international law. We understand the importance of sovereignty, and we are calling on the government to recognize the importance of CARICOM, the importance of this region remaining a zone of peace, and to revisit their very harsh and sometimes violent language and recognize that this situation requires diplomacy.
Yeah. Well, let me just share with you and our viewers this morning the latest comments of the Prime Minister. So Prime Minister Pennelopa does not plan to bow to any pressure from Venezuela, as she stressed that Trinidad and Tobago will not be blackmailed and is not dependent on any Venezuelan gas. She declared that no one, be it the Venezuelan government, the People's National Movement, CARICOM, or any other entity will pressure or blackmail her government into retreating from the fight against the drug cartels. And these statements were made just yesterday from the Prime Minister.
Well, as I said, we do not support drug cartels. There isn't a CARICOM country that supports drug cartels, but we recall, I think it was last year, when you had the issue between the Essequibo, between Guyana and Venezuela, and the role CARICOM played in resolving this matter. We must not only think about today, we must not only think about next year, we have to think about the next 20 and 30 years, because we understand the consequences of Trinidad and Tobago being isolated. We understand the consequences to our manufacturing industry, education, social development, sports, every single issue that you can think about, where CARICOM is involved and where we depend on the region. I mean, you look at the balance of trade between Trinidad and Jamaica, between Trinidad and any of the region, or manufacturers, we depend on the region. And therefore, if we take the position, as was done a couple of years ago, Trinidad is not an ATM machine, and, you know, as the Prime Minister said some time ago, you have the right to say what you want, I have the right to say what I want. As a vulnerable island, as a small island developing state, we simply cannot, and it's not advisable to take that kind of approach.
You feel, yeah, and just touching on that again, you feel that the posture taken by the Prime Minister has been too aggressive, and because of that has put various arrangements and relationships with Venezuela and even in the CARICOM region at risk?
Well, definitely. I mean, I maintain the position that we do not support narco-trafficking and drugs, but you are a signatory to international law. you do not want to put Trinidad in a position where you simply feel that you don't need CARICOM. And that appears to me the position that Trinidad and Tobago is taken. You cannot, I looked at a press release, I think it was yesterday and a couple of days ago, we have no problem with Venezuela and the people of Venezuela. And yet still your language is kill them violently. And not, you have a responsibility to ask the United States to say, okay, yes, at this point in time you have had these vessels just being blown up. And we have at least the information that at least 2 Trinidadians were killed. I mean, you can ask the question. You can, like many other countries in the world. And of course, like other CARICOM countries, you have that responsibility to say, where is the evidence? Because if we take the position that it is okay to just blow up a vessel and not provide evidence as to whether those persons were actually involved in criminal activity, then we run the risk that that can be a pattern that we can develop in our own country where people will feel they have the right to do the wrong thing and not be accountable.
Your position re the presence of the USS Gravely in Trinidad and Tobago waters. Of course, the government continues to say and continues to emphasize that the presence of the warship here is to bolster the fight against transnational crime and build resilience through training, humanitarian activities, and security cooperation. It will also strengthen the long-standing partnership between both countries. Of course, Venezuela is seeing this quite differently and is seeing it as an act which they describe as hostile provocation. How do you see this?
Well, I mean, let us look at the timing, because it's really a question of timing. I do not think that any Trinidadian or Tobagonian or anyone in the CARICOM region objects to capacity building, objects to training. But if you have in the public domain discussions about killing violently, if you have discussions about war, if you have discussions about the largest warship heading to our region, and it comes at a time when you are hearing in the United States, both from the President as well from the Secretary of State, their position as it relates to Venezuela. And Trinidad and Tobago is just a couple of miles from Venezuela. We have always had a situation where Trinidad and Venezuela have had their issues in terms of fishing vessels from time to time, and we have found ways and means to resolve those issues. Because I'm from San Fernando, and for years, you know that, I mean, people go there for a weekend, and you have those activities taking place, but it has never escalated to the point where you feel that there is need for any consideration about a war. So if this vessel comes at a time just when the Prime Minister returned from the United States, where discussions were held, and you consistently see every other day a vessel being blown up, what do we expect the Venezuelan people to think? I mean, it's logical for them to think that there is some nexus because of the timing of that vessel coming, together with the fact that we also know that the largest warship in the world is also heading to this region. So yes, we are always happy for training. We understand that as a small island, we may not have the resources, we may not have the capability. We always talk about capacity building. We recall the OPVs, we recall the blimp, we recall that this government was not supportive of those interventions that at that time the Honorable Patrick Manning put in place. As a matter of fact, they objected to the OPVs. They cancelled both the OPVs and the blimp. So here it is, this vessel comes, and is a practice now. You put out a press release, and that is the country, the people are expected to simply accept that as a training, and also to believe that the rest of CARICOM and Venezuela will simply say, oh, well, they're just here for training. That certainly is not good enough. And just as the President of the United States and the Secretary of State is making themselves available to the press and to the people of the United States, the Honorable Prime Minister should make herself available to the press and to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, where we can at least be satisfied that she's willing to be accountable and she's willing to make herself accessible. So those very difficult questions that need to be answered should be answered.
What about the narrative and concerns about the build-up of war machinery, if I can put it that way, in this region? Because some people believe that this is not only about an attack on the drug cartels. In fact, yesterday there were reports, of course, the picture, the video that we're looking at right now, that's the USS Gravely, a warship. Of course, the world's biggest warship is on its way to this region, and it is joined by 8 other warships. Also, there are helicopters, there are submarines. 10,000 troops are on their way to the Southcom area. And even there has been even a narrative in the United States. Well, here's what. This is just not about drug cartels. This is about a regime change and about war. There was a senator yesterday in the United States. Yeah.
Lindsey Graham.
And he was speaking about a conversation he had with President Trump. Of course, we know President Trump, over the past few hours, he was, I believe, in Japan and making deals and arrangements there over in Japan. But again, the narrative, this is about a regime change and about war.
Yes, and the narrative in the United States, for example, they have been talking recently about what took place in Panama and also what took place in Grenada. We know there's a price on the head of President Maduro. So clearly you cannot ignore the fact, and that's why the vessel being here for most of the people cannot be by accident. And that's why I'm making the point that you have Senator Lindsey Graham speaking, you have Rubio speaking, you have persons saying to Congress that you need to come and let us have a debate and get permission if it is that you're going to invade. And you have the president saying very clearly that he does not need the permission of Congress. So if all those discussions are taking place, we cannot pretend that it is not likely to happen. And therefore it is necessary for us as Trinidadians and Tobagonians and as a CARICOM region, as small island states, I mean in most cases, Trinidad, Jamaica being 2 of the countries with the largest populations, but many countries sometimes 10,000 people, 100,000, even though Guyana is a large landmass, they too do not have a large population. So we are not like other countries in the world that have traditionally prepared for war and would have the kind of equipment that the likelihood is you can say you can protect yourself. I mean, we have heard, I don't know if you saw that there was a release again yesterday as it relates to migrants who are anyone who's here illegally. Mm-hmm. So again, the timing.
Yeah.
And it is not just Trinidad and Tobago and CARICOM, but it's also Latin America. I mean, if you listen to the president of Colombia, there are 3 million Venezuelans who are living in Colombia. And it's not just Colombia, it's Ecuador. As a matter of fact, it's every single Latin American country will tell you that at some stage you have had people that flee Venezuela and went to live there. So are we also thinking about what is likely to happen in terms of, if Venezuelans decided, listen, you want to come to Trinidad? So it requires us to start planning. And as you know, there is on Friday, because I saw my notice this morning, there's going to be the extension of the state of emergency. Mm-hmm. So, all of this is linked. And as a people, if it is that all of these senators, congressmen are openly speaking about what is the proper course of action, we cannot, as a country, continue to just receive press releases from the government and from the Prime Minister. At this point in time, they need to come and face the public and tell us exactly what is going on.
There has also been a narrative over the past few days, and you would have spoken about how countries such as Trinidad and Tobago, small countries, vulnerable countries, very fragile economies. So there has been a talk about that and how a PNM administration would have dealt with a situation such as that, because there has been the argument that because of how vulnerable we are as Trinidad and Tobago, that this administration really had no other choice.
Well, that may be the case, but let us go back to Grenada. You know, I recall I was a student in Barbados doing law at the time. And I mean, there are a lot of similarities. You remember Eugenia Charles going to the United States, speaking to President Bush, and literally inviting him to come to Grenada. So to say that we don't have a choice goes back to what CARICOM said. I mean, have we explored the issue of conflict resolution? Have we explored mediation? Are we willing to say that this area should be a zone of peace? Are we willing to say that traditionally we understand the issue of sovereignty? Are we willing to accept that there is international law? And this wouldn't be the first situation where you have actually contemplated the possibility of conflict resolution. As I said, there was a recent situation between Guyana and Venezuela as it relates to Essequibo, and CARICOM played a critical role. So I do not accept the fact that the government has put itself, the government is in a situation where they have no other choice, because from day one, their position has been very clear. Kill them violently, and at the same time saying that you support the people, you have no problem with the people of Venezuela, but you originally you said that the dragon was dead. Originally, you had absolutely no support for that until clearly whatever discussions that took place in the United States during the General Assembly, there was a turnaround. Now that Venezuela, and you came to Trinidad and say, listen, we are going to Venezuela, we are going to negotiate, the dragon is alive. Venezuela has now taken the position, listen, because of how you are treating us, because of what we are seeing taking place, our position is we are cancelling all agreements.
Yeah. Madam Opposition Leader, please stay with us for a few more minutes.
Sure.
We are going to a very short break, everybody. We are coming back.
Within every system, there are rules and laws, and those who enforce them, obviously because love in the hierarchy is non-highly important. Together our civil rights and surround this world, just as we built at night, who got full control. But if it is repair to trust and guardians be the prodigals.
All right, everybody, so welcome back. Of course, we are continuing our conversation this morning with Opposition Leader Pennelopa Beckles. Ma'am, thank you very much for staying with us for a few more minutes. You know, as we look at what would have transpired over the past few weeks, read the situation between Trinidad and Tobago, Venezuela, and the United States. And my position has been that I thought that and these are my words, that the Prime Minister had taken a gamble. In the context, if we go back to a few weeks ago, she was speaking about these tariffs, the 15% tariffs. And of course, you have the problem of Forex in Trinidad and Tobago. You have the problem of diminishing oil and gas reserves. You think that she has taken the right gamble, again, gamble, my words. Has she taken the right gamble? And of course, I also want to put into the mix CARICOM, because CARICOM is, as countries, it's a large trading bloc with Trinidad and Tobago. So in that context, in trying to understand what she is trying to do, does it make sense?
Well, it clearly cannot make sense. I mean, let us think about, again, what happens, what is the perception
Yes.
for an investor? I mean, there are a number of things. We know that the attraction to Trinidad and Tobago is the issue of gas. And that's why, you know, you set up Point Lisas, Tamana E-Tech Park, Atlantic LNG. We know that over the years why we have attracted a number of oil companies but other investors because of the fact that we have had gas. I mean, we have had moving from 100,000 barrels a day in oil, and we know that there has been a reduction. But the truth is that we find ourselves where we ask the question, is it a gamble, or is it a question where you have this vision that somebody else wants to settle a score with a country, and you are facilitating it, whether that is the case. So at the end of the day, is this gamble going to pay off for Trinidad and Tobago? We need to look at what has happened to other countries that have been involved in war. And it is not just the issue of war, it's the issue of climate change. It is whether investors will tell themselves, we are going to come to Trinidad. What about just bring in your goods, normal trading, for Christmas? What is going to happen? Have they really thought about it? I don't think they have thought about it at all. I really do not believe that the Honorable Prime Minister has looked at the consequences. Let's even think about tourism. Let's think about the fishermen. Yes, we can understand that some fishermen say they feel, okay, we have a certain element, we feel a little safer, but nothing has really started. Are you going to still say that if there's some war or some semblance of war breaking out? So clearly, I am of the view that they did not give it sufficient talk. I do not think that we should be risking the lives of the people of Trinidad and Tobago and risking the lives of people of CARICOM. There always are other options. You can always come to the table. You are seeing now, for all these years, what has been going on between Ukraine and Russia, what has been going on between Israel and Palestine, that people recognize. You can have this war going on for years, but at some point in time, there are two things. One, could you have avoided it? And when it takes place, are you going to have mediation so that people can return to their lives? And we are seeing what has happened to the people of Palestine, what has happened to the people in Israel, and we also recognize that in the eastern areas, there are a number of other countries that are impacted. And once you talk mediation, then you have to bring in, President Trump is going to all these different countries, finding sometimes somewhere that is neutral. So you look and see what has happened in other places. You look and see plans, you look and see strategies, and you realize that it is not a situation that we cannot mediate, and it's not a situation where we, Trinidad and Tobago, cannot say, listen, we are part of CARICOM, we need CARICOM, and therefore it is important for us not only to think of today, but to think of our future, and recognizing that there has always been a relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and all the CARICOM countries, and it is important for us to maintain that zone of peace.
So the advice is, and not necessarily advice, but change course.
Well, it's not in our interest, as far as I'm concerned, to continue to use the kind of language that literally encourages military intervention, that encourages war, and encourages division between Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the CARICOM region.
Yeah. I just want to shift gears a little bit, because I see where the opposition yesterday sent out a statement, and it speaks about government shutdown of budget debate in the Senate. What has happened here?
Well, let us go back to what happened in the House, and if we do a comparison between the House and the Senate, and it's linked to what we are discussing today. You have the Minister of Homeland Security, you have the Minister of Defense, you have the Minister of Justice, and we understand that a lot of the issues that we are dealing with today, even as it relates to Venezuela, the state of emergency, where the debate will take place on Friday for the extension of the state of emergency, that it's about crime. And yet still, the Minister of Defense said absolutely very little on crime, and you have three ministers that spoke neither in the House and neither in the Senate. And we are of the view that that was very deliberate. And at some point in time, they have to come to the country and tell us why it is, for such an important area, where you're going to come now on Friday and give all these reasons as to why you're extending the state of emergency, but yet still, during the debate, not one of those ministers saw it fit to speak to the country on crime.
But how does the opposition counteract that? Is there an option?
Well, I mean, our position is that, as we did, you put out your press release and you make the public know, listen, it is important for you as members of the public to pay attention to the fact that the government has deliberately taken a position where they do not want to speak in the parliament, especially during the budget debate, on issues of crime. Because crime has traditionally been, I mean, when we were in government, that is what they attacked you on. You know, you don't have any plans for crime. You don't have any plans for crime. But here it is. You have the opportunity to say to the country, these are our plans. These are the monies that we are spending. Yes, in the finance committee, questions were asked. And every time a question was asked, it's like, you know, well, we can't give you that for national security reasons, So why? Why would they not want to speak in the House and in the Senate? 3 ministers, not one of them speak on crime.
Madam Opposition Leader, I'm sure that you would have seen, I believe it was on the weekend, where the Prime Minister would have made, and it could only be described as damning statements against the People's National Movement, and also linking the People's National Movement to crime and criminal gangs in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm sure that you may have seen that release on the weekend.
Well, I saw the release, and I also put out a release immediately. I mean, the Prime Minister is being reckless, and it is absolutely and totally, absolutely ridiculous that the Prime Minister would make those kinds of accusations. I mean, we're in politics, and you can agree, you can disagree, you can agree to disagree, and as a politician, you feel very passionate on certain issues, and from time to time, you know, things can get, you look at the parliament, things get a little bit out of hand, but to go to that level, I mean, because this is public, this is going international, I mean, and it's just absolutely ridiculous, and as I said, it's reckless, and it is calculated to cause mischief and to make the People's National Movement look bad. But I want to say to the Honourable Prime Minister, she needs to recall that one of her former ministers, Devon Maraj, as I recall, indicated that he had evidence that he took to the police where one of her own sitting members of cabinet was involved in human trafficking. If it is that the Prime Minister has evidence that any member of the People's National Movement has been in any way associated with criminal activities, then she has a responsibility. Take it to the Commissioner of Police. If you have information that I'm involved in any such activities of drug trafficking, criminal activities, then take it to the police. But you remember what she said even about the Law Association. I mean, making reference as a senior counsel to Eater Food people and using the word filth being associated with attorneys of law. It clearly means that it's just a total act of desperation. That is clear desperation. That is not about wanting to engage in a debate. That is about having stayed home for almost the entire Finance Committee, started on Tuesday and going on Saturday, coming one day for about 5 minutes. And then at the end on Saturday, then you appear in the evening, and then you would put out a release, clearly showing that you are just desperate. That's all. That's what I have to say. We are not going to leave those things lightly. That's what I'll say at this point in time.
Let's get back a little bit to the budget debate.
Yes.
Because I suspect that even, and I know that the PNM had held a news conference a short time after, but it was even today, it is felt that there was some dereliction of duty on behalf of the opposition, because many people, I suspect, and even your members, supporters of the PNM, were waiting to hear your contributions as part of that debate. Once and for all, what happened?
Okay, but well, I mean, it's important for the public to know that there are 13 MPs. Camille Robinson Regis was not there, so Camille was ill. So they are 12 basically to their 28. So at that point in time, 7 speakers, because you're going 1-1, one opposition, one government. But if you look at it, I mean, we would have had 5 speakers remaining, and they would have almost still have 19. So that, I mean, traditionally, because I started off, I was first a member of parliament in 2000, and you had a situation where there were 12 of us, you had 16. I mean, it would vary, but even so it's not unusual that in a debate, because people need to understand this is a debate. This is not a situation where, if we look at the numbers, so you have 14, you have 12, and they have 28, that at some point in time you're just going to sit and you just see one after the next, a government, a government, a government, a government. That's not a debate. So over the years, there has always been some kind of agreement that you have 2. You come down to the end and there may be 3 or 4 speaking one after the next, but they were not willing to do that. And therefore, at that point in time, we took the position because we really believed that their policy was that you were having a debate. I mean, you end up with 5 more and you end up with almost 19 people still to speak. I mean, that's not a debate. So is it that you were going to go 5-5 and then you would just have almost 14 people speaking one after the other? Traditionally, government and opposition, you ensure that you give the best opportunity for your ministers to speak. If they do not speak in the House, they have the option that they can go and speak in the Senate. And that has happened to us I recall, I think it was last year that the debate ended as well, where everybody didn't speak, and then some of the ministers went to the Senate. But in this case, you go to the Senate, and still, most of the ministers, Attorney General, Minister of Homeland Security, Minister of Defense, Minister of Justice, and several other ministers, senior ministers, Minister of Works, Minister of Public Utilities, they spoke in neither the House or the Senate, but what they want to do is to throw everything on the opposition. It's like in the Senate, we have 6 senators, okay? They have 15, but yet still, most of them did not speak.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the contentious issues, and it continues to be contentious, and I know it was a concern for your party, is the issue of URP and CPEP. I know that this administration has spoken about, well, here's what, these programs are going to be reconfigured and there's going to be a training component. I know that the opposition and some of your MPs who would have come here and would have said, well, here's what, we are even going to challenge what this administration is doing, because the data provided by your party was that, well, maybe about 20 to 30,000 people were now on the breadline. What's the PNM's latest position as to what has happened to these programs?
Well, I mean, they have made it abundantly clear that there is no CPEP, there's no URP, there's no reforestation, and there is no allocation in the budget for any of those projects. And yet still the government said that they're going to create 25,000 jobs. Now, we were very meticulous in terms of asking those questions. And in the finance committee, you are asking, well, where is the money for these supposed elaborate projects of which you speak? And there's absolutely no funding whatsoever. I mean, so you reduce on-the-job training, you reduce monies in the Ministry of Youth, you reduce monies in terms of the multiplicity of youth programs, whether it be YAPA. I mean, you have closed down even civilian conservation corps. So where exactly are these, where are the jobs of which is, and where is the allocation? There is no allocation. I mean, it is just like you tell us that you have a deficit of just over $3-something billion, but you're going to borrow $19 billion. So it clearly cannot make any sense. I mean, anybody who understands basic maths about revenue and about expenditure knows that those figures simply do not add up.
Yeah.
And if it is that you were really concerned about the population and about jobs, then you have been in government now for 6 months. And everything is employ TT, and then you have this situation where you are going to employ 25,000 persons and
yes.
almost 100,000. Where is the funding coming from? Because it's very easy when you look at your finance committee and you look at every single ministry where you can see an increase in terms of employment. And in most cases, there's a decrease.
Yeah.
So the population is finding out that this government has misled the population. They're finding out that that budget is a very deceitful, dangerous, and fraudulent budget.
Yeah. So you believe, judging from what you're saying, is that you believe that this administration has not provided an adequate roadmap as to how to generate jobs, how to fix the economy, because we know we would have had for a number of years now problems with the economy, how to attract investment. They have not provided
well,
the roadmap.
it is simply not there. It is simply not there. I mean, whilst they want to argue that we were so heavily dependent on all the multiplicity of projects you talked about, you know, the mannequin, the manatee, the dragon gas, we also looked at the fact that the diversification was taking place. You looked at, I mean, even the new Minister of Trade talked about the fact that he saw increases in terms of the non-energy sector. So that was also there, but they have not tell us at all how they intend to deal with the non-energy sector. They have not showed us any plans, any projects. There is absolutely nothing new. If you look at what Minister of Energy said, or the Minister of Trade, any of the projects that they spoke about, and we mentioned it in the budget debate, all the projects that they are classifying as new were projects that were started under the People's National Movement. They, in this budget debate, has not indicated one new project that is going to be started by this government.
Were you surprised by what transpired recently with the nutrient plant?
No, I was not surprised. I mean, in speaking to former Minister of Energy, the Honorable Stuart Young, no, I was not surprised because, you know, it's not just, we go back to the issue of investment, we go back to the issue of gas, we go back to the issue again of negotiations, we go back again to the issue of diplomatic language and the fact that you cannot instruct and bully people. And they are developing a type of approach of bullying. You know, you either do this or you either do that or. When companies and investors have options, and there are many parts of the world who are saying, "Come, we're going to give you land, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that." People are not going to remain in a country or come and invest in a country where they don't feel comfortable or where they feel that the process developed by the government is one of bullying. It simply will not work because all countries in the world, I mean, look at what's happening in Guyana. I mean, they now discovered oil, producing oil, and they are inviting investors. Like it's like the tourism sector. I mean, there it was. We talked about sandals in Tobago. All the disruption, all the criticisms, and St. Vincent said, "Well, okay, they don't want it there. Come to St. Vincent. Sandals is built." So we must understand that if you're going to attract investors, it's not only about what is available in terms of oil and gas, but it is what is available in terms of the relationship. What is available when you send a message to investors and say, because it's about the ease of doing business, is one of the things that we have not been very good at. And we have improved, but there's still a lot to do. And that is a typical example of when we talk about not facilitating the ease of doing business. Because something like that situation clearly requires an investigation to find out exactly what went wrong and to ensure that we don't have a repeat of something like that again in Trinidad and Tobago.
Madam Opposition Leader, we just have a few minutes again. I know that we discussed a number of issues this morning. Any other issue that you'd like to place on the table this morning before you leave us?
Well, the SOE that comes up on Friday, we are, as an opposition, we are waiting patiently to hear from the government as to the reason for the extension. We recall that at the time the government brought before the public of Trinidad and Tobago the reason for the SOE, they made it very clear. The Commissioner of Police made reference to a conspiracy, to gangs, to threats to the judiciary, threats to ministers of government, and we now are waiting to see what exactly would be the reason for the extension of the state of emergency. It's going to be debated at 1:30. We know Christmas is coming. We know that Carnival is coming. We remember that there was no Independence Day parade because of that threat. Whilst we see that they spoke about no fireworks, we see that fireworks actually was allowed, depending, I guess, on what activity. So Christmas is a time for us as Trinidadians and Tobagonians, and Carnival is coming. So if you talk about, we don't know whether it's going to be 3 months or whether it's going to be 6 months, but we wait patiently for the government's explanation.
Yeah, well, from what I understand is that yesterday the Prime Minister would have given the impression that it is going to be for 6 months. Of course, the government and also the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service have been saying, well, here's what the SOE has worked amazingly well thus far.
Yes, but I mean, a state of emergency cannot be your main intervention to deal with crime. I mean, you have to have a plan to deal with crime, because we remember the state of emergency that this government had years ago, where they arrested thousands of people, and almost every single person that went to court was successful for, malicious prosecution. So that what exactly, the people of Trinidad and Tobago will not be satisfied for you to simply say that because you have seen a reduction in crime, that equates to continuing the SOE. If that is the case, is the SOE going to become a permanent feature? And that's why I said it was important for the 3 ministers who have responsibility for activities relating to crime should have come to the public via the Parliament and say and give us some explanation, not just about the fact whether it be murders, burglaries, but also say to us, what exactly are your plans, separate and distinct from the state of emergency, so that the people of Trinidad and Tobago could feel safer and know that the government is taking the issue of crime seriously and not simply using the state of emergency and expecting that that is your answer to crime.
Yeah, Madam Opposition Leader Pennelopa Beckles, thank you very much for coming this morning and speaking to our viewers. We do appreciate it. Bye for now, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, we're coming back.
Shall it be the rulers, the religious ministers, or the professors from Harvard who are going to guard the cards?
Still you.